Buongiorno.
Good afternoon and welcome to this session 60 years afterwards. Europe that is there and Europe that has to be earned again. So, well, this is something that is very close to the title of this year's meeting. Europe has always been an important theme in the different editions of the meeting. We had a lot of European guests, presidents of the European Parliament, of the Council. We have always been Europeists with the idea Europe of people, and we believe firmly in this European idea. Before the fall of the wall and after, as you might remember, many years ago, Europe from the Atlantic Ocean to the Urals was the desire of a Europe that was even bigger than the one we have today. However, if there is a theme that really is very topical today is Europe. Some people say that Europe is at the origin of all our problems, that we need to avoid anything that is European. We don't want the euro anymore, but we are still Europeists because we want that the principles that made Europe are still, we want them to be still valid. We want the people to feel that Europe is close to them, that this is not an empty shell that gives way to nationalism, and this for many different reasons. The first being what we saw in the recent days. We talked about that yesterday with Prime Minister Gentiloni. So, well, immigration, and if Europe is divided in Libya, in the Middle East, in terms of the fight against terrorism, that would be a disaster. We've seen a lot of terrible crises on the southern shore of the Mediterranean that are mainly due to the lack of unity in Europe between Israel and Palestine, Syria, Libya. So that's where we need unity in order to counter terrorism. This is quite clear at the moment, also in terms of safety. So this unity, however, needs to be a unity also on different levels in terms of economy, development. So Europe needs to control the budget, but it also needs to boost employment. So, well, then cohesion on important development themes. A slogan by Enrico Letta when he came here as president of the Italian Council was that Italy was a big country in a small world, and but we need a European unity for that. So we thought that we really had to have this session on Europe, but we decided to have it our way. So we won't be starting from the analysis of what we have and what we don't have, but we are starting from what we have. Those who are against Europe, those who attack Europe, forget that there is already something going on. There is, for instance, the Europe of research and development that has obtained great results in scientific terms, scientific discoveries, as well as in terms of space projects. There is the Europe of students who move around the Union and study in different cities, in different European countries, both during the secondary school and as well as during university and for masters. So it is quite normal for young people to go and study in another European country. And then there is the Europe of employment. 9% of Italian, or rather of Italian graduates decide to work somewhere else. This is, in a way, also an opportunity for many people. So you must understand that there is also a Europe of solidarity. So, well, the opportunity to tackle themes that are related to solidarity, keeping in mind that Europe takes up 58% of the welfare expenses with 8% of the population, so we cannot do it, we cannot afford it on our own. So there are so many positive examples. So this is the question we are posing today. There is also the Europe of the euro. What would the crisis be if we hadn't had a monetary union that prevented even bigger collapses? Well, I've studied and I've read a lot, and I do believe that the disaster would have been much bigger. So what we wanted to talk about today is how can we build on these positive aspects. So we will start from two positive aspects. But first of all, we would like to welcome our speaker. And well, I think that he is obviously extremely distinguished, Antonio Tajani, who is here today as President of the European Parliament. Enrico Letta, who came here already as President of the Council. Today is the President of the Jacques Delors Institute. He is a great friend of the meeting. So we will listen to their speeches, but in order to introduce this theme, we have two speeches on existing examples. So one is by Lucio Rossi, project leader at the CERN, which is a very good example of a European cooperation in the scientific field. So I'll give him the floor. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for the invitation, and I'm here to talk about something that is positive. So first of all, what is CERN? It was founded in 1954. It was the European Council for Nuclear Research, and it was founded immediately after the Second World War. We do not depend on Brussels. It is an intergovernmental organization. Countries come together, they draw up directives or guidelines, but then the community can organize its work as it deems best. So the researchers are self-organized. It was founded in 1954 thanks to a group of scientists, including Eduardo Manli, who then founded the European Space Agency. CERN was the result of two different incentives. So one is a more technical aspect, the realization that no European country would have been able to counter the scientific power of the Soviet Union and of the United States. So that's how we decided to put our resources together to have something that could be bigger. And then there is another aspect which is evident in the spirit of the CERN. The CERN was born out of the knowledge that European scientists were a community, a geographical but also a cultural community, a different approach. The scientific freedom, together with the peaceful spirit of the CERN, are the main characteristics of this organization. So while Europe has this excellent point in this organization that is based on knowledge and the value that knowledge has per se. Scientific research is born from the idea that what is real is not is not something casual. So we need to we can actually say that the value of knowledge is a per se value, and therefore knowing is worthwhile. So this subsidiarity of the scientific world is born from these two different aspects. 22 member states, including one country which is not European from the geographical point of view, Israel, 2,500 staff members, about 1,000 associates like students, for instance, and 11,000 scientists coming to the CERN from every corner of the world. And about 60% are European. The remaining 4%, about 5,000, are non-European. The CERN has now the biggest American scientific laboratory. 1,600 American researchers come to the CERN to work and to make their research studies. So this is actually the United States coming to Europe. We have the LHC, 27 kilometers of high technology underground based on superconductor magnets. In 2012, with Professor Bertolucci, we talked here about many other important discoveries. And these discoveries were announced officially by Fabiola Gianotti, who's now the general director. So it is a very powerful center, and it is an example for many other organizations, for other world projects. But it is strong because, because it has the means, because it is well organized. This is obviously important, and fortunately, the European countries do finance this work. So this is important, but we are strong because we have an identity. CERN is Europe at its best, and this is something that is acknowledged by everyone in the world. The project that I am actually leading is a bridge project. It is an LHC project, and this will take us to the year 2040. We have a new project that the Chinese are actually copying. Well, I see this as a positive thing. CERN and Europe do not exist as a fortress. If we wanted to defend all our values from our invaders, so to speak, we need to, CERN is something that works because, as Pope Francis said, only if it is free. We do not need to defend our CERN fortress. But, the most important thing is to export our spirit, our research, because knowledge has a value per se. So this is something that we should not defend. We defend it by exporting it. I don't know whether Europe today would be able to found a new CERN, and I'm asking President Tajani, the Europe of Brussels would be able today to create something like the CERN of the 1950s. So the spirit of the 50s that was capable of overcoming nationalism. Yes, we did something together because we had a common target. But we did realize that we were already something that worked together. So this is my experience, and I do hope that you found it interesting. The second positive example is that of Giorgia Covio, who's a student now at Bocconi University, and she will talk about her study in Europe through the Erasmus Program.
Buongiorno a tutti.
Good afternoon. Well, first of all, let me introduce myself. I'm Giorgia Covio. I'm 23-year-old. I am taking a master in marketing management in Bocconi, but in the past I studied in Padua. I was born in Padua. I studied economics and management, and I could take part in the Erasmus program. My third year was spent at the Montpellier School in France, where I got my double degree. So, well, this is what I would like to talk about today. Apart from the results, from my experience, I might say that this Erasmus program was a very important growing opportunity for me as a person. And I can summarize what happened to me, what I experienced in three elements. First of all, I opened up my mind, my way of looking at the world. We were only 4 Italian students among 200 foreign European and non-European students. So it was inevitable to encounter diversity. It was clear from the very beginning to know that how our fellow students had different programs, different studying methods. So we learned to accept this, and this helped us understand better what we can do beyond what we were used to doing in our own universities. So we gradually realized that each of us has some valuable aspects that can be put together. So, well, and very strong friendships were born then. So this is where I understood the importance of integration and multicultural environment. That was something that I have only heard of in the past, but I had not experienced it firsthand. And by living together with these students, I became more and more curious to know more about their cultures, their countries. So we just, organized some dinner parties to know what the recipes, the traditional recipes of the different countries were. So we exchanged our traditions. And so if before I left for Montpellier, I thought it would have been difficult to have a chat in English with someone else. So once I got there, I saw that there was a whole new world to discover. The second element is that this experience was the right boost at the right moment, because it enabled me to see something different, a different reality abroad, but made easy by the fact that there were no administrative problems and hindrances. So this is actually one of the main benefits of the agreements between European universities. In my first year, I would not have been ready to leave and study abroad for 3 years. But with the Erasmus program, I could do it for the whole university period. So in my third year, I was, so to speak, more mature, and I was convinced that my studies were the right studies for me. And then I also realized that Italy is a country that everyone admires, and everyone wants to come and see Italy at least once in their lifetimes. So, well, this opened my eyes, and I could finally see that there are a lot of positive things in Italy. And this made me think that the most important things of the Erasmus programs is that when you leave for something more, well, you can be more curious to find out what is there. So you're happy to go away, but you're also happy to come back and bring back with you everything you have learned and known. The third and last point is that this experience has been an enormous opportunity of personal growth. Spending a whole year in an unknown place with people I didn't know, and that was not easy at the beginning. When I left, I thought that this period should not be like a break from my life in Padua. So in this context, my relationship with my relatives and friends in Italy, by being away, I needed to have some friendship, of someone to share what I was doing with. And this is an aspect that was actually present also with the people I met in France. So this is my personal experience. So I really can recommend this experience to anyone. And I'd like to add one last thing. In order for this experience to be useful, you need to be committed from the university and institutional point of view. In order to have a fruitful experience, the universities participating in the program, in the network, need to be interesting for students and in line with the values and the guidelines of the universities of origin. So there needs to be a certain coordination among universities. Otherwise, this exchange cannot be fruitful. Then there is a second aspect, which is a more personal aspect. I think it is necessary that a student feels free to actually take this experience seriously, because this exchange program shouldn't be a waste of time. So apart from this aspect, you need to keep alive your curiosity in everyday life, the desire to know more about the world. So this opportunity of exchange between European university can become an opportunity of personal growth. Thank you.
La parola a Enrico.
I now leave the floor to Mr. Enrico Letta. I participated in many editions of the meeting. However, the last one was 4 years ago when I had another task. And since then, I never had the chance to come back. I would like to thank you for inviting me, and I would like to tell you that I missed you over the last 4 years quite a lot. I am particularly glad to be here for several reasons. I would like to add 2 reasons. First of all, because I'm here with a person I I appreciate very much, and I'm referring to Mr. Tajani. I do not only estimate him as a person, but also as the president. Bearing in mind the task he's having now. Italy is one of the founding members of the European Union. Italy has always played a fundamental role in the EU process, and thanks to the role of President Tajani, Italy has managed to make up for something that was missing. Since 1979, when the parliament started to be elected by citizens, Italy has never had an Italian president. Mr. Tajani is playing his role at his best, and this also goes to the benefit of the entire country, as well as to the benefit of Europe as a whole. The second reason for me being so glad to be here is the title you selected for this year's meeting. The titles are always very creative, but this year is the best title you have ever selected. It's a proper and right title for this moment of our history. The title tells us what kind of responsibility we have as Italians, first of all, and as Europeans as well. we inherited Europe. None of us has ever done anything to conquer Europe. We didn't fight the war. We were not engaged in the reconstruction after the Second World War. We did not build physically Europe. We were given the EU as a gift, thanks to those who died for Europe and thanks to our ancestors. And we are called upon to reflect on the title of this year's meeting. The reasons have changed. The reasons of our fathers were not the same reasons, and we will not be able to have citizens fall in love again with Europe with the same reasons brought forward by our ancestors. We cannot run the risk of recovering the past pathways. This is what Giorgio said in his beautiful introduction. We need to understand what's happening. And starting from this understanding, we are called upon to draft a new paradigm for Europe. If we fail to do so, we will lose and waste one of the greatest achievements of our history, and we will simply squander one of the greatest opportunities that we have. Why am I saying that everything has changed? Well, I would like to summarize this thought with one remark, a simple, direct statement, which tells you everything. If you allow me, I am not accustomed to give personal or personalized ideas, but I would like to tell you something. What is the duration of the life of a person vis-à-vis the duration of history? We would think that it is nothing. Yet, in one generation, so in the lifespan of one generation, simply think about what happened. Think about the changes. And I'm thinking about my own generation. Yesterday, it was my birthday. So I am now 51 years old. I am, I would say, halfway the life of a generation. So when my generation was born on this planet, the Earth had a little bit more than 3 billion people. When my generation will leave this planet, the Earth will be populated by 10 billion people. So in the lifespan of one generation, of one person, this Earth will have passed from 3 billion people to 10 billion people. The first consequence will be that we had one only Earth when there were 3 billion people, and it will also be one Earth when it will have to make 10 billion people survive. So the second remark, when my generation was born, there were 1/6 Europeans of 3 billion people. So 1/6 were Europeans. Do you know how many Europeans will be there out of 10 billion people when my generation will leave this Earth? From 1/6 of the world, Europeans will be only 1/20 of the world. And it's not enough. I said that since we were born, well, the Earth was inhabited by 3 billion people, and there's 7 billion people more that will inhabit the Earth do not come from Europe. The 7 billion people extra all come from Africa, Asia, or the US, or the Americas. So this is one remark which tells us a lot about our responsibility as Europeans in this period of time. We should not build Europe for the same reasons for which our ancestors, the founding fathers, created Europe, the European Union. The reasons have to do with our sons and daughters, and the descendants of our sons and daughters. We should not only talk about demography in terms of figures. We should bear in mind the eyes of our children and the eyes of our grandsons and granddaughters. instead of focusing on figures and dates. We should rather think about what happens when my son will turn 40 or when my grandson will turn 15. This will have happened. So if this is the pace for change, if this is a change which awaits the world, and if we as Europeans will be in these changes, what is the sense of our being in the world? It cannot be the same sense that we experienced when Europe was the center of the world, when Europe decided over everything, when the world was divided between those who spoke English, those who spoke Spanish, Portuguese, or French. Tomorrow's world will be totally different. If the 7 billion extra people that will inhabit, the world come from Asia or Africa, we as Europeans have a great responsibility. We are lucky enough at this moment because we have the first non-European Pope of history, and the Pope is calling us to our own responsibility as Europeans, and the Pope comes from the other end of the world, and he's telling us that we as Europeans need to remember that the values that we as Europeans are the only ones to have all these values together and who apply and implement these values every day. Equality between men and women, the rights of workers, the fact of children not having to work, and their right to be protected, the saying no to the death penalty, the protection and the safeguard of the environment, of culture, of the heritage, of the landscape. Let's consider all these aspects. Is there another place in the world where all these values are theorized and implemented? No, the only place is Europe. At times, when we talk about other countries, when we talk about foreign countries, we do not even consider our responsibilities. And I only mentioned a few of these important aspects. 1/3 of the people living in this world not even know what all these values are. When I think about the future, I think about my kids, my children, and I wonder in which world I would like them to live. Do I want my children to live in the same world where I've had a chance to enjoy a nice environment, a healthy environment, or would I, or do I like to think about my children living in a world in which decisions are taken by Trump or by the Chinese government? I have no doubts the rules should be the rules decided upon by us as Europeans. But for this to be true, we need to be influential and united. If we do not manage to be united and to agree on major issues, we will be fragmented, and other continents, other countries will dominate in the future. So the previous two speakers said important things, young people, students, science, research. Well, we need to move on the pathway they've indicated to us. And along with this, we also need to make a great effort so that Europe becomes that tool which gives all citizens, to all citizens of our peoples, the sense of being useful, of being positive, of being something more. This is an essential element. Well, the Erasmus program was mentioned earlier. Think about how beautiful it would be if it were possible for all secondary high schools students in Europe, all of them, if they all had the possibility, the opportunity to spend 3 months with the Erasmus program in another school, in another town, in another country, at the expenses of the European Union, which is an opportunity they do not have at present. They would be all equal. And there is a difference now between those students who are privileged and many, the majority of students, who are not so privileged. There are many students having their families pushing them to learn languages and to experiment life abroad. Europe should not be the Europe of those who are privileged. Europe should be there for all the disadvantaged people, for all those who have had less and who have no families able to help them from the financial point of view. And Europe should also take a step forward when it comes to what kind of future and what kind of Europe we would like to organize. I believe in the values of the meeting, and especially the value of subsidiarity. These values are theories in Europe, but they are not always implemented, and we need to send an important message from here. I am in favor of Europe, of course, and you know it, but I'm in favor of the fact that Europe should be less Brussels-centered. Europe should go back to being the Europe of the many European territories, the many European regions and cities. Not only the Europe of one single capital. That's not the way it works. We will not continue to be united if we only have one capital in Europe. And to achieve this result, we need something more. We need all individual states to play a key role. This is a very peculiar moment for Europe and for Italy, and I would like to make a strong announcement. Well, France has just come out from a very profound crisis. The French run the risk of having a president against Europe and against the euro as a single currency. Germany had to face a challenge by political parties which are against Europe. But these two countries, I am sure that after the German elections, these two countries will relaunch the pathway for European integration. This is the stake for us as Italians. Are we ready to be part of that work, of that dialogue? Well, Italy has always played an important role in the European Union. The treaties of Rome were not signed in Rome because of touristic or climatic reasons. They were signed in Rome because of historical issues. Europe has started to be based on France and Germany. Then in 1954, the French did not agree on giving away part of the sovereignty when it comes to defense. But thanks to the Italian initiative, and it was not by chance that the first moment of relaunch was thanks of the then Foreign Minister Martino in 1955. Then on the basis of this relaunching, the treaties of Rome, Italy was the protagonist, had a major role. We should never forget that Italy should not be the country which constantly apologizes. We do not have to think that we as Italians always have something to be forgiven to us. We know that this relaunching of Europe, which will certainly happen in the next few months, well, either Italy is ready to be part of it, or Italy will have to undergo and to withstand other countries' decisions. In our history, there has never been such an important presence of Italians in the European Union. I've mentioned Mr. Tajani, and I should also mention, and it's a pleasure for me to mention, the President of the European Bank, Mr. Mario Draghi. Mario Draghi is at the same time thinking about the interests of Europe as a whole, and he's also thinking about the interests of Italy. And we should acknowledge this. At the same time, we have the European Foreign Minister. Italy has never had that responsibility. I'm referring to Mrs. Mogherini. That's another important responsibility for Italy, another very important task. So we should, first of all, enhance and focus on the value of our representatives in Italy. And we as Italians should play a role and do our part. How should we do this? I think this is a time for Italy to leave a personal opinions and divisions aside. We should choose the pathway of reconciliation and unity. This is a time for unity for Italy. This is not the time to continue focusing on divisions and personal opinions, personal supporters. This will not lead us to play the key role it deserves to play within the European Union. Why am I positive when I think about the future of the European Union? Well, I'm positive because I think about my personal experience over the last 3 years after resigning from my task as the president of the Italian Council. I decided to go to France to work. We work with many Italian students, and at the same time I created a school of politics. Many of you had a chance to participate in this initiative, and it is an experience which is available for free. Well, I realized one thing, and it is quite a great satisfaction for me. But this opportunity may be a missed opportunity if we do not exploit it fully. We know that teaching has changed. It is changing. The lessons of the past we were accustomed to no longer makes any sense. There's a terrible competitor to the typical lesson. It's called Wikipedia. It is called Google. If the professor, if the teacher comes eager to transfer information to his students or her students, there will always be a student who is ready to deny something which is not accurate, only because he or she has checked on the internet. So we should not replace teaching with Google or Wikipedia. We should challenge Google or Wikipedia in the field in which they are losers, namely the transfer of the key cardinal points of the compass for life. No Google or no Wikipedia will ever be able to transfer to young people the key points for life, because these key points strongly need transfer of experience. This is why we are changing teacher, and teacher is now based on simulations. For instance, we simulate negotiations, and it is very well entertaining for me. I create groups of students. We give them one problem, one issue to tackle while they're carrying out the simulation with no advice, with no notice. We change one datum of the problem. And there's a group of Chinese students, there's a group of US students. They come to the teacher, to the professor. But the Chinese students are more polite, but they substantially tell you the same thing. They are telling you that you as teacher were not correct because you gave the problem and then you changed a fundamental datum of the problem while we were studying on it. This is not correct, and you can answer them. Life is not correct. Your working life will not be made of linear aspects where nothing changes. You need to get accustomed to the fact that life is a sequence of crises and not as a straight line. And I can assure you one thing: if there is one Italian in that group, the Italian student will have found the solution because he has managed to apply, to implement his own creativity, flexibility, which is not a part of the culture, of the identity of many other peoples. The Italian student will have solved the problem despite the change. It's not a chance that Italian researchers are the most wanted because they are able to find solutions. They are flexible enough. Yet we as Italians, despite having this flexibility and the spirit and the ability to adjust ourselves to new situations, despite this fact, we behave differently if there is an individual Italian or if we behave as a people. If we think about Italy as a country, we have no success. And so we need to think about this, and we need to give an answer. It's a difficult, challenging answer, but those who are able to give an answer to this question will have a chance to make Italy stronger again, thereby strengthening Europe, the European Union, and also our children. Thank you very much.
Allora,
And now the floor to President Tajani. And by giving him the floor, I would like to underline what Enrico Letta was saying about the importance we attribute to the European Parliament, because we believe in institutions that are democratically created. And we do hope these institutions will become more and more important in Europe. Thank you. Thank you, Giorgio. And thank you to the meeting for the very warm welcome. Once again, it's a great pleasure for me to be here today to talk about the biggest of all problems, that is to say, the future of Europe. And I would like to thank Enrico Letta for the kind words that he addressed to me. And I must say that I do feel the same, because, well, you are a man with a great culture. You've been president of the council of this country, and we have worked together as European Commissioner. And because we were colleagues together at the European Parliament, but I have a high esteem because you are a very honest person, and this is more important than anything else. Enrico Letta, in his speech, being an intelligent person, underlined the fundamental values of the European civilization. Our values: freedom, man at the center of things, and subsidiarity. In all the different fields of our lives, if we do not take these values as starting points, we won't be able to draw up a strategy that will make it possible for Europe to give concrete answers to its citizens and become a protagonist in today's world and in tomorrow's world. Because without roots, without an identity, everything becomes extremely complicated. There cannot be political leadership if there aren't men and women who believe in what they do and turn their values in concrete facts. Personal ambition, which is legitimate, cannot be the prevailing element, because sooner or later you would give up. the economic interest cannot be the driving factor. Of course, everyone wants to have a nice life, but this cannot be the only key element. You need to believe in something so that you can fight for something throughout your life. We need leaders that are believers. We cannot live in the memory of the leaders who founded the European Union. They are part of our family album, but there are many more, even before our founding fathers, because our culture, our civilization wasn't born after the Second World War. It was born in ancient Greece. But today, we need to have leaders capable of leading Europe towards the future. Europe has done already many things, but now it's the time for change. Times change, reality changes, so we need leaders who work together. We cannot have just one leader. We need more leaders because Europe is multifaceted. We need to have men and women that decide to lead their countries having in mind something more than local elections. People who lead their countries with the consensus of the institutions, taking them towards concrete goals. And the same task has to be carried out by those who work in the European institutions. I have had the honor and the difficult task to lead, to chair the European Parliament, which is the only democratically elected institution of the European Union. As a parliament, it is our duty to make citizens understand that European institutions are something more than the grey offices in Brussels. They are something that is more important. Institutions protect their citizens. They give answers to their needs and questions. Institutions do more than issuing rules. They give answers.
E noi non possiamo cambiare.
And we cannot change this Europe, which we have the duty to defend, because we do not have an alternative. We, as Italians, would be too small if we decided to face the world's challenges on our own. Our politicians would never have the chance to face globalization alone. We can do this as Europeans, together, safeguarding our identities. When people tell me that I am a Europeist, I say yes, but this does not mean that I have renounced my homeland. I am the son of a military man. Of course, I am attached to my own national identity, but I also have a European identity. So these three challenges that we have to face today are terrorism, immigration, and employment. Well, terrorism is the wound that tore us apart in recent times. In Spain or in Finland, Italians were killed or wounded, and also in Germany before that. So what do we have to do to fight terrorism? Promises and statements are not enough. We need to fight together, because this attack against our model of civilizations, those who want to attack Europe want to attack our freedom. They do not fire against policemen or politicians. They spread terror among citizens, common people. So the first answer is a political answer. We should not change our way of living. But in order to do that, politics need to make citizens feel safe, protected. So we have to work together as Europeans. There are so many different petty jealousies. The intelligence services of different countries should cooperate, because that's the only way to save human lives. And if they don't do that, terrorists will win. So we need to have a European intelligence. I said that before also in my press conference. We need to have a European FBI, just like we have the Europol. We need more cooperation among judges. We need more prevention. Italy, luckily, had less problems because our police forces and intelligence services were very good at prevention. You will remember when they managed to stop those terrorists from Kosovo who wanted to attack Venice. The European Parliament has decided to create a special parliamentary committee that should prepare a series of proposals for the member states against terrorism, to identify weaknesses, to plan prevention, because there are different kinds of prevention. There is also cultural prevention. For instance, can we explain to a child, a second-generation European, that he or she is lucky because he lives in Europe? Can we really teach our children all the values applied to concrete things, as Enrico was saying? Because if we are weak and we cannot teach the children of Europe what being European means, apart from having a European passport and all the advantages that come with it. If children do not discover their European identity, when they grow up, they will look for another identity, and it could even be a negative identity, because they could lead or follow a negative leader. There are so many very young terrorists manipulated by adults who use their enthusiasm to spread violence and death. So, well, we need to give children and young people their identity. We should show them that our society is not falling apart. It is not made only of money, euros, banks, and fun, but that there are also values that are an integral part of our everyday life. So it is not by taking away the cross from the walls of classrooms that we help integrating young people from different religions.
Se lo mantieni.
If we keep our crosses on the wall, then you can integrate these people, because it means that you are not afraid of the other, that you're strong enough. A couple of days ago, I had a dinner with the Father Albanese, who knows Africa very well, and he was telling me that after a meeting in a Muslim country in Africa, he asked these Muslim leaders if we could celebrate the Holy Mass. You know what happened? They said yes. They attended, these Muslim leaders attended the Mass because they saw someone who believed in his values. Even if they were against his values, they respected him. Integration is also a matter of respect. We have to respect the others, but we must have the others respect us. Particularly with our example, with our behavior. So the fight against terrorism needs to be accompanied by an action regarding immigration. Africa in 2050 will have 2.5 billion inhabitants. In 2100, 5 billion inhabitants. Do you really think that we can solve the immigration problem, the flows from Africa with 10 boats in the sea? Of course, we needed to now manage the migration flows from Libya with a humanitarian spirit, but also with some kind of strong action. So we need to think about what Europe should do, what Europe should already be doing to help Africa. But not as new colonies, not like those who only see the economic benefits, like Chinese, for instance, but someone who wants to be friends with the African country. We should help that the African countries grow. The European Parliament approved a funding of about 4 billion for Africa. Is that too much? It is not. We should have a 40 billion investment that could generate an effect of 400 billions, because there are so many different aspects: demographic growth, wars, so many other problems that will lead these people to abandon their country. So we should actually act also through democratic economies. Our industrial and entrepreneurial system can play an important role here. Agriculture, small and medium enterprises, extraction industry. Obviously, we have some interest in Africa. We cannot think that an industrial continent like Europe will be the only one to decide the prices of raw materials on the London Stock Exchange. So we do need a strategy for Africa to be the first counterpart of Africa. But again, there needs to be a political will. Europe can go on only if on terrorism and immigration there is a political will to make the right choices. joint choices, leaving aside egoistic purposes that can stop us. And the same is true in the fight against unemployment. We have an unemployment rate that is still very high, even though the crisis is almost at the end. We have very high unemployment rates in Italy, in Spain, among young people. Our children could lose hope if we do not do something. So Europe needs to have a real industrial policy. We need a real industrial revolution in Europe to create a productive system, a modern system that respects the environment while creating new jobs. Without enterprises, without industries, we cannot create employment in Europe. I've always been quite critical with reference to some choices made by France with reference to shipyards, but not because I am Italian. There were so many other events. France has already bought in the past from Italy. We do not need national champions when we have a global challenge to face. We need European champions that need to be competitive. When we talk about Russians, Chinese, Americans. Otherwise, our industrial system will be colonized. They want to buy Fiat out. That would be a terrible mistake from the political point of view. We cannot give up our Italian and European know-how. And this is not a form of protectionism, but rather it is the need to have an industrial policy, a growth policy. And here, I just repeat what Enrico said about Mario Draghi. If Mario Draghi hadn't chosen the quantitative easing, the European industry, in particular the Italian industry, would have been shaken by the crisis even more. Thanks to quantitative easing, we saved millions of jobs in Europe. And we need to think also about the scheduling that will be chosen by the European Central Bank to go back to the preceding system, to the previous system. The euro has already become stronger towards the US dollar, and this is a risk for our experts. So this is my personal opinion. But I believe that in the future, if we want to have a Europe with its own role, a Europe that can protect its citizens, well, then we need to revise, to think about the role of the European Central Bank in the treaties, because, well, Mario Draghi didn't have much room for maneuver and did its best. But if the central bank could really work as a central bank, well, from the legal point of view, I'm not at all. I do not agree with the initiative of the German courts, because I believe that Mario Draghi and the European Central Bank did respect the rules. So I'm sure that in the end, the Court of Justice will pronounce itself in favor of Mario Draghi and the ECB. So, well, this does not mean that we have to increase the public debt. We should not throw away money. We need to support enterprises in difficult moments. We need more cash. Then, obviously, the state needs to save money. But then there will be a different inflow of cash, so public expenses will be reduced. Enrico Letta talked about a problem which I consider extremely important. Europe of the future, which is something we cannot renounce. Well, what kind of Europe will that be? Obviously, there need to be values, otherwise the society will collapse, won't be able to face the challenge of immigration. But this Europe could be led by just one person, well, one lady. Well, that is not balanced. There is no balance here if there are only the German interests that need to be safeguarded.
E vi dico, Enrico Letta potrà testimoniare.
The results that the Germans achieve, they achieve them because they deserve them, because they safeguard their interests, because they fight for their interests. Would it be enough to add France to Germany? Of course. The French-German axis could recreate a certain balance. But I do not believe that would be beneficial for Europe. It's not enough to have an agreement between France and Germany. Two countries have the duty to be protagonists in this phase, together with France and Germany. And these countries are Spain and Italy. So this, well, an agreement between these four countries, so because we do not want to, well, actually exclude the others, but it's like a bicycle race. There are the four strongest cyclists that, in a way, drive the whole group. So then other countries will follow. We do not want to exclude any country. This must be a tool to make progress. Let's think about defense policy. We do need a common European policy in terms of defense. And 60 years after the treaties of Rome, we have renewed this commitment taken by de Gasperi, that is to say, to create a common defense industry that will in turn lead to a common European defense policy. But in order to do all these things, we need to have, well, Italy needs to be present, to participate. We need to see our political horizons as something that goes beyond the Italian borders, north and south. Politics need to take care of, well, small interests, but if we do not play our role in Europe, then the repercussions will be felt by all Italian citizens. The other countries will do that. We should not be critical of Angela Merkel. Angela Merkel, she's actually doing her job, and she's safeguarding the interests of her country, and we have to do the same.
Per dar vita a una politica industriale europea.
When the Italian Industrial Association meets the German Industrial Association, I'm quite happy to see that they work together, because there is a need for a dialogue. Italy needs to participate, not to be subjugated. If we do not do something, then we will have to accept what the others do. We're not victims. At the end, well, at the last phase of the elections for the presidency of the European Parliament, there were 2 Italians. So why? Because we made some choices, because we took a commitment. So there is the need for more Italy in Brussels. But I'm not talking about the number of people working there, but because we need more balance in Europe. Italy will be followed by Poland and other countries. And we will have to face the challenge of Brexit, which is an unprecedented event. We are not talking a lot about this because we are obviously focusing on the terroristic attacks. But Brexit will be very painful. Well, most of all for the United Kingdom. It made a really terrible mistake. But we need to safeguard the interest of 3.5 billion European citizens and the citizens of the Italian citizens living in the United Kingdom at the moment. So we will have to pretend from the United Kingdom that they pay back all they owe to Europe, not a euro more, but not a euro less. We will have to make sure that there is peace in Ireland, and this does not mean to be ready to go at war with the United Kingdom. Once we will have solved the Brexit problem, I'm sure that the United Kingdom will be our friends, especially in the fight against terrorism. Also because they can leave the EU, but they cannot leave Europe geographically. So this is another important role that politics need to play. There are so many different Brussels officials that take too many decisions on behalf of we don't know whom. But this is partially also our fault, because when politics are absent, bureaucracy turns into politics and stops doing what it should do, that is to say, make the machine work. Politics should actually show the direction, and then bureaucracy should make the machine work. So these are the challenges we need to face at the moment. We need to change something also in the treaties. Let's think about the Dublin regulation, for instance. Let's think about the European Central Bank. But if we want to, or rather we want for our children to inherit a Europe that is similar to the one our founding fathers were dreamt of, we cannot give up our values. Because we can do anything. We could even, have good politics. we could have good economic results. But if there are no underlying values, all that we achieve will be short term. And I would like the Rimini meeting because it really makes us think and reflect in terms of commitment. And I am taking a commitment here today in front of you. Thank you.
I would like to briefly draw the conclusions of this session, starting with a sort of a criticism vis-à-vis those who say that we are happy with everything. No, identity is not a way of taking a stance. So those who say that identity is equal to taking a stance is a Methuselah, is a person who has an old way of thinking. It means that these people have not earned anything of their past, and they're repeating in their pages things that we read 20 years ago. So please update your ideas. And I would like to say what goes very well with us and what we are against. First of all, we agree with the institutions. We are satisfied with the institutions. This is strange because everybody is more than willing to oppose institutions and to criticize institutions. There are people criticizing Europe, the politicians, the policymakers and institutions. It is not fashionable to state that we are satisfied and that we are interested in the institutions, even in the European institutions. It is more fashionable today to say that institutions are to be totally eliminated. It is comfortable to state that the culprit is always the government. We state that we still believe in institutions such as the European Parliament because we strongly believe in a Europe of peoples. And it is fashionable for us to believe in European institutions. And today, this is what was stated by the participants. So please, we are not in favor of debates, of TV debates, in which you are right if you scream louder than your adversary. This is not the case in life, in real life. So first, we strongly believe that institutions should have a greater say. They should be even more important, and the European Parliament should become the first decision-making place, even vis-à-vis the national governments. This is the first issue. Then secondly, the participants also said that institutions must be subsidiary, so they should set an example. And we think that institutions should not be the heads of governments stating the nationalistic importance of their own countries, because this means going back to the 19th century. This means going back to nationalism, which led to 2 world wars. We do not believe in wars being waged in Africa or in Asia. We believe that institutions should have many places, subsidiary places, where Europe counts by giving more room to the various places. The universities, the CERN, the Erasmus Program are all examples of institutions creating and giving space, giving room to autonomous places. So the European Space Agency, the CERN, the universities should be autonomous. There should be places which are not governed by councils of ministers. There should be places where Europeans meet and work. This is a different image of Europe, a subsidiary Europe. Because evidently, as Mr. Tajani said, of course, you can manifest against the Italian government, but you cannot do that in front of Brussels institutions. Conversely, we want places where people listen to other people. And the third element, we've listened to the most important aspect: the world is changing. We're going to have 10 billion people living on the earth. Africa and Asia are changing fast. So if we do not have people reasoning vis-à-vis the world which is changing, and if we have people simply focusing on slogans, we will never be effective in tackling the changes. So far-sighted people should reflect and should think about possible implications for the future. But we need time to understand. For instance, in the Rimini meeting was some papers carried out surveys about the opinion on the jus soli, on the right which is attached to the place where a person is born. There are different opinions with this in respect vis-à-vis this topic. We found people arguing and people reasoning. And so we have a sort of rainbow solution, 100%, 90%, 80%. So we need to reach solutions, bearing in mind all the different shades. We cannot focus on all is black or all is white, because there are many shades of colors, and the young people do not even know that we have a black and white TV in the past. We should focus on a multi-shade kind of immigration. So we should reach solutions which stem out of reasoning, solutions which are the result of reflections. So you are right after, or you're wrong after you reason, and it of course takes time, because we should never achieve trivial solutions. So we need reasoning, we need time. So we've listened to the speakers who said that Europe needs to ponder, the EU needs dialogue. This is not a waste of time. We no longer want political leaders telling us that they have managed to solve the problem which were not solved by the previous policymakers. It's not possible to say that you come out with a solution after in the blink of an eye. We need politicians, we need policymakers who reason about the topics, about the issues. And you use the reason and you focus on witnesses. You focus on examples if you want to solve problems. So the citizens should talk. Many citizens should talk with their sons and daughters who want to participate in the Erasmus program, and they will have a totally different view. Maybe some people have sons or daughters who would like to go and work in other European countries, or children who have managed to carry out and to create startups abroad. This is the Europe we want. We want a Europe based on testimonies. Testimonies are something more of a series of anecdotes that were told and transferred 60 years ago. Testimonies lead to changing the methods, and testimonies should become models. Newton, when he discovered the universal law, well, he started from an example, from an apple falling on his head. But in the past, some people would have said that Newton had been attacked by an apple. Newton, on the contrary, made an example which became a model. So we want to create examples that can turn into models. This is what we want to do. This is our task. And so we are against those who would like to go back to taking stances without reasoning. We are going to use all the time at our disposal to focus on testimonies which can become models. If it takes 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years, we are sure that we will give something as legacy to the future generations, and probably we will observe the future generations from heaven, because we believe that heaven exists. So I invite you to go forward with this meeting, and I would like to thank important speakers such as Mr. Letta and Mr. Tajani. This is a new way of being here as a policymaker, and it is possible to contribute to build the meeting through donations. Because, well, against those who state that we focus on economic friends, well, we answer by saying that we, first of all, rely on the donations of all the participants to the meeting. We are the first friends of ourselves, so please, if you're a friend of the meeting, please donate as much as you can. We would like to invite you to the various desks. There are volunteers willing to welcome you with wearing a green T-shirt. Please participate in this new way of drawing the future. Please donate, because the more money we have, and the freer will we be to say what we want. Thank you very much.